gotta make sure I can. And got it. Yeah, it's gone.
Okay.
Good. And then where's my screen shares here? Okay, perfect.
Hey everybody, welcome. Just going to be a couple minutes here letting people in.
Blast that puck, and a good job by Bouchard to move to the middle here.
The Oilers playing tonight? Sounds like somebody had it going in the background.
They're down 1-0.
Who are they playing?
Islanders.
Okay. Bit of a surprise hiring. Hey, that happened quick. Anybody watch the press conference? Kyle, did you catch the presser last night with?
Yeah, I caught. I guess you could call them highlights with a little bit of inconsistent message there, but no, I didn't dive too deep into it.
Yeah, I was going to go through the picture bin. Knobloch was my roommate in second year midget in North Battleford. We lived together for a year. So
No way.
Yeah, all kinds of old pictures from those days.
That's awesome.
Four of us in a house. There was two brothers, him and I all lived in the same house with a old Ukrainian couple, and it was a fun year.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. We'll go here in another minute. There's still a few people here, so.
Yep. Sounds good.
It looks like it's slowed down here a little bit with getting people admitted, so we'll get going here. Again, thanks everybody for taking the time to hop on tonight. So I know there's Oiler game going on and it's Monday night. Everybody's probably got something, so thanks again for just making the time to be on here. Just with the numbers, it's important for us to keep going with these. I know there's a whole bunch of people that request the YouTube link and they've been being watched afterwards, but it is nice just to have a little bit of a crowd here for the live version of it too. So for those that are here, thank you very much. Tonight's going to be an interesting one. Kyle's, I know just in conversations with Kyle over the years with this, something he's really passionate about and has done a lot of work on with this one too. It's very cutting edge. You know, some of the other presentations, again, we're kind of all over the map trying to cover the whole spectrum. We've had some that are fairly basic. This one's going to be a little bit more progressive, and you know, might be a few things in there that are I wouldn't say controversial, but may not be in line with some of the teaching from years ago that we all got. So I love this conversation. It's going to be a good one. So all about, you know, constraints-based learning and how players learn and some of the things that we can do to really help that process of acquisition. So And again, Kyle, thanks so much for taking the time to hop on these. I really find people that are in your position are so valuable because not only have you played at a high level, but working with your own children, going through and getting to see them kind of cradle to grave through the minor hockey system. That's just something I find is really hard to replace. So many people that haven't been through that process don't really understand it at a level. It's just such great experience to conduct all those experiments over the years. So I'll let you get going. I know you got a little bit of a intro there, so I'll turn the floor over to you and you can start sharing your screen whenever. And let me know if you need anything. Thanks, gang.
Awesome, Mike. And thanks for everyone for coming out here. I'll just bear with me while I try to switch over here. This should work. All right. How's that look for you guys?
Good.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks for everyone for being here tonight. I changed the title of the topic after Mike and I talked about this a while ago. We were looking at practice design and trying to optimize practice design. And as I went down this rabbit hole, what I found was the most important thing that I thought would be unique and, like Mike said, cutting edge and possibly, well, hopefully a little bit controversial because I'm trying to make change here, is the concept of learning. And so the title is Maximizing Learning and Development and Practice, but really we're going to be focusing on learning in this. So again, my name is Kyle McLaughlin. I am the assistant coach, well, one of the assistant coaches with the Canmore Eagles in the AJHL. My background is here. For the people that were here for my first talk, I talked a little bit about this, but basically just think of it as a kid from outside Ottawa, got to play NCAA hockey for St. Cloud State, had some success there. Then, I coached at a very young age at 15 in some hockey schools. And then when my kids were born, I started coaching them in Canmore minor hockey and followed them up through Pee Wee. Started a skill development company, and then been fortunate to coach for the Eagles. Got a couple accolades along the way, and then been with the Eagles for my 4th season. And then most importantly, I think the biggest input I've gotten is being able to coach with some amazing skill development coaches, some of the greatest minds in the game, I think, with Mike Ellis, Adam Nicholas, and Daryl Belfry. But for this talk, the most importantly, it's not so much about my hockey. It's about what I do to pay the bills. So I'm an emergency doctor in Canmore. I have 20 years of teaching in medicine, and I really find that teaching is an important part of my job and something I've taken some fancy to and studied. I'm a clinical lecturer at the University of Calgary, and I've won some awards for teaching over the years as well. And so I'm trying to apply more about what I know in medicine and teach to this talk. For resources, I provided this last time in the talk I gave, but I got some QR codes, so feel free to scan these if you're interested. But these are a couple great resources for learning about how people move and learn how they play their sport. So the How We Learn to Move by Gray is an outstanding book. Some of you have heard of Daryl Belfry's book. This is his first one. He talked a lot about teaching in this. And then the coach's site is a great resource for everything teaching and learning and being a great coach. And this talk in particular, The Secret to Unlocking Skill Acquisition, I thought was a particularly good one and applicable to this. My real-time learning for this talk came from these guys. So much like we're collecting, or we're here as a collective as coaches, your coach mentorship group and is really important to have. So I'm very fortunate. I have some friends that coach in the NHL and some coaches in the USHL, the AJHL, and in minor hockey as well, that I respect their decision. They're also people who aren't afraid to step outside the box. And I asked them a simple question. What are 3 tips to increase learning in hockey or in practice? That's all I did. Vague question. And it was really fascinating seeing which way that these guys went with it. Some people were very academic, some people were very practical, and everything in between. So a lot of the tips I'm going to give you in this talk are going to be based on the feedback from these great coaches here. So let's start out with the objectives. We're going to talk about what is learning. Okay, how do players learn? The difference between technique and skill. We're going to look at the action continuum in sport. I'm just going to move. Yeah, actually, that's right. And then we're going to go I'm going to try my best to teach you what the term nonlinear pedagogy means. Long-standing word, but it's a teaching approach that I think is very important in gaining a lot of steam in sports. Within that, we'll talk about the co-teacher concept, constraint-based learning, game situation exploration, and I'll take you through an example of how I view teaching a new skill using practice. All right, so what is learning in sport? We're going to start out with. So a couple definitions. Now, if you guys have pen and paper, there's going to be some pretty heavy content here. Let me see if I can remove that off the side. No, okay. So you might want to take some notes. There is some stuff I'm going to talk to is pretty deep. I'll try to go through it in a good process. But so definition of learning. Learning is more or less the permanent change in behavior that is reflected in a change in performance. You change the behavior, you change the performance. Pretty straightforward. Traditionally, I think a lot of people think of learning in hockey as just accumulating technique and teaching different techniques. So that's the way I thought of it initially, but it's more than that. And I think this definition is really the one that I anchor on. It's the process of becoming attuned to key sources of information that can be used to complete a task and coupling that with functional movement to solve that task. So if you look at it, there's information, and then you're coupling with that with a movement to solve a task. The piece I think we've been missing historically is understanding what that source of information is. And then with sources of information, we need to make decisions. And we'll get to, that's one of the biggest kind of key points of this whole talk, is incorporating decision-making into our teaching. So how do players learn? You guys might have seen this before. 3 major ways that people learn is through auditory, impulse, visual learning, or kinesthetic, which is learning through movement. The most plain and the less impactful is auditory. The more powerful ones are visual and kinesthetic. Now, historically, coaches have been primarily auditory learners, or auditory teachers, I should say. We talk to the kids, we talk in the dressing room, we talk on the ice, we talk on the bench. And it's good. You know, a lot of kids and players can understand that. But in order to do that effectively, we have to think about being a teacher. Okay, you think about your best teachers that you had in school, and they were often the best communicators. They often had the best energy. So a couple of key points I've gotten from my colleagues when they talk about learning is, and specifically about being a great teacher and communicator, is you must, in order to communicate well and be a good teacher, you must have a clear plan. You must know what you're doing, and you must present it in a concise way with expectations, key points, and describe the purpose. So if you could approach a practice with a clear plan of what you want to accomplish and be very concise in your presentation of it and highlight only a couple points, and I would argue, like as I'm going to describe, I focus on one thing for a 90-minute junior A practice, like one key concept with maybe some sub-points within there, but one, that's it, all right? This is a huge thing, I think, and it goes to what we'll talk about a little bit later about co-teaching, is it's more impactful for the learner if you ask questions rather than lecturing directly to them. Don't talk at them, talk with them, okay? And we'll highlight that a little bit more. Along with having a clear plan is you must have a good foundational understanding of the skills you want to teach, and have a good understanding of the concept of scaffolding or progression. So most of you have heard of progressions where, you know, you start from A and then you add something to B, you add something to C, and you kind of build you build your progression or your skill set. Scaffolding is the same thing. You can think of it as you have a foundation and then you build skills on top of it. So having a good understanding of the base skills, how to teach it, and then how to build it is super important as well. Oh. And Mike, I think I lost. Oh, there we go. Perfect. We're good. Okay. Encourage curiosity. I think we're good. Curiosity is a really important piece, I think, to learning. Curiosity it gives intention for the kids. It gives them more impact of their input as well. And I'm going to talk about allowing the players to explore concepts, and that starts with curiosity. Providing feedback, praise, you guys have heard all that. This is a really important concept. I think it's overlooked, is we must adapt our teaching style to the learning style of the individual. Everybody knows that player that they've had that they just really have a hard time communicating with, or getting them to do what you want them to do in practice. And I found that, you know, through medicine, I teach lots of people, students and residents all the time, and everyone's a little bit different. They respond to different inputs and different feedback. So knowing the individual is really important. That'll help you be a better teacher for that individual. The last thing for being a great teacher is to be energetic. Bring that juice, right? Your energy is contagious, and if you're excited about a practice, they're going to be excited about it as well. Make the learning fun. So the next higher level of learning is visual learning, and this is traditionally done on blackboards or coaches' boards, done on the bench. But you know, another way is obviously through modeling, through demos. You can also use images, pictures, especially diagrams, I think are really important. I think those are common things that we use, but one of the questions I got on my last talk was the implications of video. And I think this is really, really impactful. Video to me is probably the biggest impact I've been able to change in my learning style is implicating video. For me, I use it in every practice that I teach. We have a 5-minute video before highlighting the concept that I want to teach. So just as example, this is a kind of a shooting in stride video that I'll pre-ice the players with. And I use it in practice as to retrieve back or to come back to it. I said, hey, remember that shot by Patty Kane in stride where he shot off his outside leg? That's what we're going to be doing next. And the players will have 5 minutes before practice. I'll go through this. I'll interact with them, often asking questions, have them identify the key teaching points out of these videos. Within practice, we can use it for drill explanation. We can, so example here, this is Adam Nicholas, and we're working on camp, and we would have an iPad. We would video players. We would have the drills on the iPad in advance. We'd show them the video of it. And then within the drill, we would video reps of individuals or different concepts, and then come back to the board and then use the video as a highly impactful teaching moment. You can also use it as the individual. There's products like Coach's Eye and Huddle where you can slow the technique down and break things down for the individual. And there are some teams that will film practices, especially if you're analyzing your systems in practice. I think another really impactful part is, I mean, everyone's seen game clips, and perhaps you've done that with your team, is go through some key clips with your team, or even using game clips to look at the individual. One of the things I think is really useful to kind of what I call bookending the skill continuum is to use a game transfer of something we've worked on. So I do this frequently with our team, is that if we work on something, so here we're working on just creativity, creating space above the ringette line with our defensemen, and you know, rolling and supporting each other, and just trying to get ourselves into a better shooting opportunity. But when we can do that in practice and then revisit it in the game, that's ultimately what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to let them acquire skill, and then most importantly, transfer in the game. Because a skill is absolutely useless if you can do it 100 times in practice, but you don't know how to do it in a game. So that's, to me, is a really important piece and a great use of video. Finally is kinesthetic learning. It's a little bit, you know, I mean, it's in simplistic form, it's just learning through movement. And we try things and we see how the body feels. And this video I'm showing you is multiple different players that are using the same technique of horizontal skating across the blue line. You see every single one of them is expressing that movement differently. And this is a movement, and I use this one too, because for most of these defensemen, they've never done this before. And so I love this piece, is letting them just feel it out. And there's really not a lot of feedback, maybe small little tip points. For this one here, keeping the head up, keeping the shoulders square, keeping the puck off their hip, you know, small little things, but just getting them to feel it. There's nothing I can't really teach them through auditory and describe what that is. It's very hard. I can show them a video, but really what they need to figure that type of complex movement is just to feel it out. And a few reps, a couple little hints, you'll kind of help them get to that. So kinesthetic learning is really important, but what really matters with this is reps. The reason why reps are important is it helps build up. Now I'm going to get into some complex stuff here. It helps build up your neural pathways. So a quick little brain anatomy lesson here is that whenever you have a movement, so if I snap my finger, my brain is stimulating my arm to come up, my fingers to come together, I press, and there's probably about 1,000 other things that are happening. And it's the nerve pathways through my brain that are being stimulated every time I snap my fingers. The more often that you perform that activity, the more myelin gets onto that nerve sheath, okay? And myelin is, you can think of it like an insulator. And so the more insulated it is, the faster the nerve signal will go through that. So I become more efficient at snapping my fingers. Now, if I look at my left hand, I can't really snap my fingers. However, if I do 100 snaps a day for 6 months, I'm probably going to get pretty close to this. And it's not because I'm building up muscle, it's partly because of the neural pathway signal that doesn't get fired is becoming firing more. So that's why reps really matter. Within the reps, improving your work to rest ratio is really important. This came up from the coaches as a really important thing. Too many times in minor hockey, we have too much rest and not enough action. And me personally, I think this is up for debate, but I like the 1-to-2 ratio. So if you split your team into 3 and a third are moving and 2/3 are resting, that's probably the right rest to work ratio. And you're all well aware of station base, hopefully. This is something that the American development model started about 15 years ago, I would say, maybe a dozen years ago. And I think it's taken hold. I think this is really effective, not only in minor hockey, but at higher levels. It allows maximizing reps, lots of individual teaching. And then another piece that this came up from the NHL guys, pace. You got to practice at the same pace or higher pace if you can than you do in games. And this, is a common concept that comes up with higher level hockey is that, practice has got to be harder than the games. And then the games become a little bit easier. Within the stations, building in progressions to challenge the individual. We talked about this. Now, this concept, the 80-20 rule, was taught to me a long time ago. And when you're looking at optimal challenge for a drill or for a station or for a technique, whatever you want to use, if you get to a challenge level or a complexity level where 20% of the time the players are failing, you're probably in the right little sweet spot where you're getting them outside the comfort zone, but they're failing enough that you can still progress and get better within it. And I see this too often with just coming by the rink and watching practices, is there's a lot of practices that are done where kids are nailing it. They have mastery within first rep. That to me is useless, and we need to get going. We need to move on to the next drill or add a significant progression to get into that 80-20 sweet spot. Non-work ethic failures are fine. Like if a player is kind of failing because of lack of effort, then you can figure that out and fix that. But I would almost say encourage non-work ethic failures. So if you want 20% of the time, you want them to fail, right? Those are moments to teach them and find the solutions, or even better, help them, guide them to find their own solutions to figure it out. And then this is a common problem I see in minor hockey as well, is that too many times practices are all about the timing of the practice plan that was created before the practice. You see six drills for 60 minutes. And if we're right at 10 minutes, even though maybe the kids have only had 2 reps, boom, we're moving on to the next drill. So I think one of the things I've given to some coaches I've mentored is said, create your practice plan, then drop a drill and just go in 1 drill less. And I guarantee you're probably going to be in the right timing for that. And if you need to, if you progress quickly through a drill and there's mastery, then you still have that drill in the back pocket to fill out the rest of your time. But resist the urge to move on until we figured everyone's doing it well. Sorry if the pictures here are kind of blocking some of my images here, but I want to go to where I was probably about maybe 6-7 years ago, or maybe 10 years ago, of creating. And this is a drill. This is a practice plan I stole from Hockey Canada's Pee Wee development manual from maybe about 10 years ago. And this is kind of a traditional practice I had as a kid, where you get a skating warm up, you have a flow drill with isolated shooting on 2 or 3 players moving, maybe a 1v1 drill, some conditioning, bag skate, and then you finish with a shootout. Sure, many of you, this practice might seem similar to what you grew up with, and hopefully this is not what you're doing to your team, because traditional practice typically had no theme. You often had a number of drills that were unconnected. There was no interaction between them. There was no build. They often were linear skill drills that teach a technique, but they don't have any representation to an actual game situation. So there wasn't actually a true skill. You see isolated movements, no progressions, poor use of ice, low reps. You see a high focus on low frequency game events. So things like doing shootouts for 15 minutes after every practice is great. Kids love it, but is that a high frequency event that we really need to teach? And then we see low focus on high frequency game events. So when I was a kid, 15 years, I never once got taught how to pick a rim up off the wall. But that's something that happens every shift. It's one of the more high frequency things that gets overlooked, right? And that's a big part of my teaching, is to work on rim pickups. I know Mike's a big fan of that too. And the biggest thing I want to highlight is traditional practices lack decision making. They're told what route to run, and if the kids can't divert from the route. So there's no moments where decisions are being made. But the problem is hockey's chaotic, right? There's decisions that need to be made all the time on the ice. It's not linear, right? The game is dynamic. It's hard to predict. Variables are constantly changing, and it's fast game, and nothing is in isolation. Yet traditional skills practices look like this, right? You get some kid going around doing all these loop-de-loos around apparatus. There's no pressure, there's no support, there's no decision making. He's just running the route that his dad told him to do. And this is my kid, I don't know how old is he here, but maybe about 10 years ago. And I thought that was skill development. So I'm guilty of that. And then you see drills like this on social media. And this is the Leafs in practice, I think a week or so ago. And people, even writers for The Athletic are making fun of this drill. People are ripping on it, saying, "Oh, it looks like a bunch of Timbits." And I agree. This is a drill I did with Timbits, but I also do something like this with our older players too. And people would mock this drill, but the reality is this looks more like hockey than that isolated skill drill that gets 1,000 views on Instagram and jumping over apparatus and stuff. So this brings us to my next topic is, what is the difference between skill and technique? Okay, so technique could be defined as an isolated motor activity, motor being movement activity, with no context. So in this drill, this is me doing a technique drill. Okay, we're just working on one-timers. There is some context because at least they're shooting from the flank position off of a power play, perhaps 1-3-1. But typically techniques don't apply to a real game. There's no pressure on our guys. There's probably no goalie in the net. There's nobody forechecking them. There's no support options. It's not hockey. Whereas let me see if I can move this out of the way. There we go. Whereas over here in this drill, I'm going to show you, this is more of talking about skill. The definition of skill is going to be the correct application of a movement or action in the proper situation in order to solve the problem. So key things here are its application of the movement in the proper situation to solve a problem. So in this drill, I've got a player with a puck behind the net. He can choose to go left or right. I've got an offensive player in black here who can choose to go strong side, weak side. And I've got an F3 or a slot guy deciding go whatever side he wants to get open. And I got a defender who can hold up, watch this guy. He can attack the puck carrier, or he could go out and attack F3. So I'm just going to show you how the difference between technique and skill through this one drill. Right? Even the goalie is involved with skill because they got to watch, they got to decide. Constantly within this drill, every single person is making a decision in this drill. Okay, now the next piece is I'm changing the environment so that they're still applying the same thing. This practice in particular was about quick release shooting. So this drill is now a 4v4 with 2 stationary players on either end and 2v2 in the middle that are moving. The goal is to get the puck down to the stationary guys, but when it comes back up, we have to shoot the puck as fast as possible. Decision making is happening all over the ice, even though it's not the proper geography of the game, but because it's cross ice, it's similar. And we're getting passes, we're making decisions, we got to get open, we got to change our body. There's a whole bunch of things that need to be analyzed and perceived before we're able to shoot. Even on the defenders, we're letting them explore different ways of defending, even though they're defending quite poorly in that drill, but that's okay. They're getting some techniques. So decision making throughout everybody in that, and the skill, the important thing here is applying the movement in the proper situation to solve a problem. So if we can say skill equals decision making plus action, how do we teach skill? So this goes on to a concept that I've coined, the action continuum in sport. And this happens all the time. This is, in my mind, this is the way I think of action happening. You have to start out with perceiving, okay? You have to perceive as scanning, it's looking. And as one of my mentors talks about, there's a difference between scanning and perception and perceiving. Perceiving is understanding what you see. Scanning is just seeing, or just, you know, you get a picture of it, but you have to perceive, you have to understand. And then your brain has to analyze everything you see in that picture. So where's the pressure? Where's the support? How much ice do I have? How fast are they going? What are the patterns that are happening? How much time do I have? Once you get to that, you make a decision as to how you want to execute your movement, your technique. So the execution is the technique, but it's placed in the proper situation, so it becomes a skill. And once you execute the movement, there's a reevaluation, and we go back to the top, and there's new perception. Okay, so when we look at traditional skill development, as I showed in those pictures, that video earlier, and in our traditional skill development practice plan, we don't connect the perception, the analysis, decision-making to the execution. And all we work on is the technique or the movement that is used in execution. So if you think about linear lines working on toe drags, you're working on toe drags, you're working on the motor activity of that. That's great, but you're not doing it in the game situation of where you would apply it. You don't allow the players to make decisions. You don't give them the situation for them to perceive or to analyze. What we want to do, though, is we want to switch that around so that our focus in teaching, in practice, applies decision-making, and we need to apply it to all drills. So important, I guess the easiest way of doing it, and this is kind of what I decided to do a couple of years ago, was I'm going to consciously try to add a decision to be made on every single drill. And how I would do that is just altering pass options, shooting options. Maybe as they come in on a flow drill, give them 2 players, they can choose to pass left or right, and then they get the puck back and they got to shoot. You know, alternative routes, you could go left or you can go right, your choice. It's very easy to create decisions if you just add pressure. So if you think of the example I just gave about flow drills, if after the player shoots, you have them curl back and then come up and surf the next player coming in, it adds a decision point for the shooter about how do they fake and how do they get around them. You can add support options. You can have moments of creativity within a drill where they get to choose how they want to express that movement. And your goal is to maximize the reads from other players within it. Like I showed in that last drill, where you can incorporate decision-making both on the offensive team, but also on the defensive team. I think we'll let Aaron in. There we go. So just in case there's some goalie parents or goalie coaches watching here today, I did include another goalie drill here. So this is a drill where we got yellow's got the puck, black's going to get the puck. Black has the option. He's only rule constraint is they have to go towards the net. A pass can come from him here. Pass can come after the net. They can wrap it, and yellow's got a support. Okay. So there's some decision making that's happening here. Black's got to decide shoot or rim. This drill here turns out being a 3v2 goalie. So White's got the puck behind the net, makes a couple crappy passes, but decides where he wants to shoot. Then we got the rebound. Just like in a game, we decide, oh, I'm going to shoot on that goalie. Okay, this one's a shooter. There's a rebound, pass option, or shot option, whatever you want. Okay, so just even though these are simplistic station-based drills, there is some context here, and most importantly, a little bit of context, but most importantly, you're creating decision making. Now, we can supercharge your decision making a couple ways. So, like I said, the decision making encourages scanning, perceiving, analyzing, but are we providing the right context? And so, this is how we supercharge the drills to not only have the decision making, so there's perception, there's analysis and decision making, but now we're going to put them in the proper context to allow a deeper level of learning, and which will give them an easier way of understanding when these situations arise in games. So this is that term, non-linear pedagogy, okay? So this is a bit of a complex term, and I'll try to make it as simple as possible with a couple definitions. So first off, it's learner-centered. Okay, it's not the coach that's guiding the process. It's actually the learner that's driving the learning process. And you can think of the coach as a guide to allowing the learner discover skill acquisition. It's also defined as a teaching approach that views the learner, the learning environment, and the coach or teacher as a complex interacting system. So if you could make a basic diagram, it would look something like this. So there's coach, player, and environment, and they all interact with each other. And this will allow deeper learning and accelerate your players' understanding and learning. If you can draw it a different way, it looks like this. And I think this, for me, is a better way. With arrows going back and forth, it's really important to understand that the interactions between these three things, it's back and forth, okay? And when I talk about environment, what I'm referring to here is the geography on the ice, the pressure that they will have, like the defending team that's coming after them, the level of support you have from your own players, and the time and space of common game situations. That's what I would define the environment as here. The nonlinear pedagogy also talks about the teaching approach. It's important that you allow variability in practice. And this is a really important piece. Traditional practices, like I mentioned, are linear, strict, and have specific routes they're finding. Nonlinear pedagogy understands that everyone learns in different ways, and everybody's going to express different solutions in multiple different ways. So you have to allow variability. You also have to create a representative learning. Representative learning means learning within the environment that you're going to apply your skill or your tactic. And so putting them in the right environment that they will see in common game situations is incredibly important. And then simplifying tasks to increase the frequency of execution of your skill that you want is really important as well. So simplifying tasks, we'll talk about constraint-based learning as a technique to simplify a drill or a game so that there increases the opportunity for the players to actually execute the task that you, or the skill that you want them to do. Now, when we look at hockey, and in particular practice design, we have to include one more thing into this diagram, and that's the task. So what is the problem? And this is something that's presented by the coach. And rather than, I'll say this a number of times in the presentation, rather than teaching the players the solution, what you have to do to follow this nonlinear pedagogy is to present or prescribe the problem. And then we're going to find other ways for the player to explore and to find the solution to the problem. And this is what happens in hockey in a dynamic game all the time, is that constantly you perceive and you analyze and you make decisions on something that's constantly evolving. So there's no strict route. We're not playing football where you're going to run a post route, or we're not going to be playing baseball where the pitch is always coming from the same spot. It's dynamic, it's ever changing. So let's break down this diagram a little bit so we can understand this a little bit more. And I'm going to get into the links between the coach and player, the player and the environment, and the coach and the environment. And we're going to talk about each of these terms in specifically. So the first area is the interaction between the coach and player. So this is probably the, I guess, the best starting point, because this is what are we going to do and how are we going to interact with the player. So as I mentioned, we're gonna prescribe a task, and then we're going to talk with the player about the task, about the problem. And as the drill goes on, we're going to use a concept called co-teaching, where we don't talk at the players, we ask questions and we allow them to interact with us to help find possible solutions. And also it allows you to use a number of other learning techniques that are highly useful. One thing called retrieval practice, which is revisiting facts that were given. Like, so if you give a pre-ice discussion and you revisit it during the drill, you connect those concepts, that it creates a deeper sense of learning. And then also with co-teacher concept, as you talk with them, it's also a bit of quizzing, which is also an effective technique for ensuring there's a proper comprehension of what you're trying to tell them, but also ensuring a deeper understanding of what you want to show them. So as all of us are better visual learners than auditory learners, I'm going to give you a video example of this co-teaching concept. Okay. All right. So this drill I'm going to show you here, teal and white are together. There's 4 of them, and red is on defense. And this is a rondo. This is a 4v2 passing game that I like to use a lot. It's taken from soccer. And the concept is just to keep the puck within the team, within the offensive team, and the defenders are trying to get it. It's pretty simple. Some people call it monkey in the middle. I think it's much bigger than that. So we're just going to start off the drill. This is a great warm-up drill. I'll show you some game application of this as well. So white team is just going to pass it around here. Okay, now I'm going to change the environment. So I just quickly told them, okay, guys, all I told them was you're allowed to move now. So the first one, stationary. Now you're allowed to move. And as you can already see from this drill, you could probably pick up a small, like they're already doing kinesthetic learning of one-touch passing. They're changing the angle of their blade. They're catching things on backhands. You're going to see some hook passes, slip passes, backhands, drop passes, and they're exploring this small little area, and I've constrained it to the blue line, the boards, and halfway through the ice. So it's going to lead to lots of interaction with the defending team. Okay, you guys. All right. So you saw that there was some failures there, and that's okay. As I mentioned, I want a 20% failure rate, and that's great. Lots of pucks out there. We can keep going. Now, I'm going to show you, this is the co-teacher concept, all right? We're going to bring the kids together, and rather than telling them what they did wrong, all right, I'm going to approach it a different way. Okay, new puck. So, okay, you guys struggled a little bit with the second one with the movement, right? Yeah, so what was going on there? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, okay. What else? What other strategies you guys think you could do in that drill? Okay, some picks. What about defense? Anything that they could do to beat you guys, I think? Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other thoughts? No? Any other thoughts? Okay, now let's do it again. Take what you guys just talked about. Let's try it again. That's okay. Keep going. Keep going. Okay, so I'll stop it right there before we apply to a more game specific situation here. But what you might not have heard in the audio, I apologize for that. I asked the first player, Tyler Lockman, what did you see? And he's saying, it was a little bit harder with movement. There was a lot of chaos. I didn't know which side to go to. So he's identifying some of the challenges he's having. And it's a perception thing. It's an analyzing thing. It's a decision-making thing. He didn't say anything about his technique at all. And then our Hoekstra on the next one talks about, well, I said, what other solutions could you have to that? And he mentions picks, he mentions lifting sticks, and then get the defenders involved with what do they see. So immediately they are teaching their own group. And then as you see, that's just one take. I just went right to it. They're improving. So there's more reps. They're starting to get some ideas. And as that drill could go on, I could stop a million times and identify cool things they're doing, but the deeper learning comes from them expressing it. Now, to finalize this drill here, I'm going to change their environment. I'm going to put them into something that's very familiar to them. Here, I'll put it in the picture. So this is familiar to them. This is a 4v2 at basically above the hash. So if you could think of the top of a 1-3-1 power play, bumper, flank, QB's over here, QB, and I have two defenders, which would be the top forwards in a PK. Now we're going to apply a rondo into this scenario, which is more gameplay. And usually what I'll do with this is 5 or 6 consecutive passes you can go in and shoot. But I'll just show you just a little bit more game application. And you can see just with this simplistic drill here, they're able to work on a whole bunch of different techniques. But the main point here, as I'm trying to show, is the communication style that I use quite frequently is asking questions. Let the players come up with solutions. You can always guide them. But I would encourage you to try this technique, and it really helps bridge that connection between coach and player. All right, so now let's move down to the coach and environment interaction. So as coaches, we set that task again. And then we're going to manipulate that environment, into a situation that we want them to, that's game related, and it's in the proper geography of the ice. We can manipulate as they move on the number of pressure, or the amount of pressure, amount of support, and the time and space they have to explore and to find solutions to achieve the task. And we're going to do this through a concept called constraint-based learning. Or you might have heard of constraint learning approach, CLA or CBL. And what this basically, the concept is, you create rules by adding things or retracting things that they can or cannot do, in order to create an environment that allows a higher frequency of opportunities for the player to apply the skill, the tactic, or the system perhaps that you want them to do. I find this is easiest in small area games, to apply that, where you create a rule. Say, if you're we worked on quick shooting there. You could do something like every shot on net must be a one-timer. All right, so they got a 3-on-3 cross ice, and every shot on net has to be a one-timer. So they have to move and get into position so they can shoot. Alternatively, what you can do is you can give a monetary value to the desired technique. So every time they make a backhand pass, they get 1 point. You get 1 point for a goal, you get 1 point for a backhand pass. Maybe you make it a little bit more complex and you say 1 point for a goal, 1 point for a backhand pass, 2 points for a one-timer. All right, and so you're creating incentives, or you're restricting the drill so that the opportunity to apply that tactic comes up more often. So I'll just give you a very simple drill here, a 4v2 red versus white. The constraint that they've created in this drill is the spacing. So the top red have to stay above the hash in between the dot line, and the lower have to be below that. Defenders can go wherever you want. And then they don't show any other constraints in this drill, but what I would say is maybe we want to connect a skill concept with a cognitive concept, a brain concept, and say, you can only shoot a one-timer after 3 consecutive passes. So the skill is the one-timer, to add the cognitive piece of 3 passes, so that you have to be thinking a little bit of ahead. Is maybe the first pass goes over, maybe the next pass goes up. Okay, where's the next pass going to go, and where should I position myself to get the one-timer? So I'm just going to show you just a quick little, this is typical small area game, just passing around. You could create any constraints that you want with this. So this drill I like to use as well is, if defenders get the puck, the top white move down and the bottom white move out, and the red become offensive guys down low. All right, so nothing fancy necessarily about this drill, but just as an example of how you make constraints. One of my favorite drills for constraints, going back to the rim catches, is a 3-on-3 game where you've got a coach up here by the blue line and a coach over here by the blue line. 3-on-3 down low with the net in the proper spot, so the players get used to the proper geography. And then on the whistle, the puck gets rimmed in down the wall, rims around the wall, and then the players have to pick the puck up off the wall every single time there's a new puck introduced. So you could blow the whistle whenever you want and add a puck coming in from this side. Then it's coming in on this side. So they got to work on backhand retrievals off the wall, forehand retrievals off the wall. And that's a great example of constraint-based learning where you have a high frequency of rim pucks so that you can apply what you taught earlier in the practice on rim catches. All right, so let's talk about a transfer game. So the term transfer game is a small area game that is designed to increase the frequency of occurrence for the desired situation, skill, or action. So that's the constraint-based learning applied into a small area game. We can call that as a transfer game because our goal is to transfer the skill that you taught earlier in practice into a more game-like situation. It connects the skill to the game. It connects the skill to the situation or the geography on the ice so that when they play a game, they'll be able to retrieve that connection in their brain and be able to apply that action in the proper spot easier. As you see, even with that quick little example, multiple decision-making opportunities. There's no fixed routes. You're not saying player A passed to B, passed to C, passed to C one-timer. It's dynamic. It's like a game. As a coach, you're able to manipulate the constraints to adjust the challenge. So you can create new solutions by adding more rules, constraining the space. You might want to make it easier, add more support, or expand the space. You might want to move nets into unfamiliar spots to see how they find new solutions for it. So you're creating new environments which allow new analysis moments and new decision-making moments. You want to stop the game to identify key moments. And you can also, as I mentioned multiple times, kids are often more visual learners than auditory learners. So video can be brought out as individual improvement, or if you want to use it as a teaching moment for the whole team. And this is really important. Like every single NHL coach that responded to me said, you got to keep scoring, make it competitive. The interest will increase, the pace and speed will increase, and make it fun. Like, so there's an advantage to the winning team. They get something at the end, and then there's a disadvantage to the losing team. Make it count. And I've seen quite a few fights in our junior team just because of the competitiveness of the smaller games. No one gets hurt, but it really makes a difference. So the last interaction is the interaction between the player and the environment. And this is where perception and problem solving meet a term I like to call exploration. So when players run simple routes on flow drills, there's no exploration. There's no decision making. You're just making the coach happy, and you're following your movement pattern, and something that'll never happen in a game, right? So when you create these interesting environments that are game-like, you got to allow time for the players to explore it. Okay, they got to be able to work themselves through it and come up with a solution. So I'm going to give you a video example here, and this is the offensive team is white and blue, and the defensive team, I'm sorry, they're in the D zone, and they're working on their D zone coverage. The dark jerseys here are offensive players, so it's going to start out as a 1v5, again exploring our D zone coverage. So we can apply this to a system. And then the drill is going to go over and do a 2v5 into a 5v5 into a neutral zone forecheck. So this is dynamic. This is representative of the D zone. It's very game-like, and with the exception of built some constraints, so it's easier on the defending team because you only have one offensive guy. But most importantly is you're allowing this team to explore this concept rather than just giving the puck to a stationary person and have the team move and stop. And I'm guilty. That's the way I used to teach this. But I think this is way more important to do it this way. So here we go. The puck goes in the corner. There we go. D1, F1, and make a play to the middle. Now we're going to go over to the other side. And we need to adapt to the change in the environment, which is going to the other side. And now we have two players. So they're all running, they know the system that they're supposed to play, but that it's dynamic. Things change. It goes behind the net. It goes back up the top. Now we're going to do a low to high play, and we're going to start a 5v5. So now we have to adapt to a different amount of pressure and support, and we got to get the puck back. And they're allowing time to explore this situation. And then we're going to finalize. We're going to go up to a neutral zone forecheck. D has to go back, get it. Now we're working hard getting on the puck. So they're working their 2-1-2 neutral zone forecheck. Now the beauty of this drill, as you see, is it gives a good example of exploration. The environment is changing, but the nice thing about it is, if you think about it, D zone coverage in one side, puck gets released over to the other side. Now we got to adapt to the other side. Now it goes low to high, and now it goes into the neutral zone. That's a typical shift in hockey. So we've been able to do representative learning in the D zone. We've allowed the players to explore that, and we've had different environments. Highly effective learning. Perhaps another good example, and this is one that comes up, I think, quite frequently, is when we work on offensive blue line shooting. So working on our D shooting from the point. The typical drill that I know you all done is a pass comes from the corner up to the point. The D maybe takes a couple steps to the middle and then fires a slap shot on a net where there's nobody in front. Oftentimes there's no goalie, and that's our offensive zone shooting practice. The problem there is there's no game representation. In a game, you're always going to have someone racing after you from different pressure points. So when I do that drill, I always try to have, now I've learned this stuff, I always try to have someone rushing them from different points, straight at them, from the side, coming inside out, outside in, different speeds. And the D has to read that pressure and to make a decision. So it's, again, they're perceiving, they're analyzing, they're making a decision which way they want to go or how they want to solve the problem to get to the task of shooting on net. The beauty of that drill is that you can add a whole bunch of other things. You can add support. Maybe you throw someone in front for a tip. Maybe you throw pressure coming at you and a D in front battling with your player in front of the net. Maybe you add another support down the wall. Maybe you add another D as a support. And then you let the players explore all the different options that they have in that area. So again, just trying to emphasize or give good examples of how we can allow players to explore and achieve deeper learning. So key things here, we want to put players in common game situations and allow them to solve the problem. Our job as coaches is to prescribe the problem and not just teach the solution. We want to avoid running routes. We want to allow for multiple decision-making opportunities. And what we can do is, like the example I gave with the offensive blue line shooting, is we can manipulate the pressure, the support, the time, and the space, similar to what would happen in the game, which will allow for new solutions. We can make it harder for them or make it easy for them, depending on what their success rate is. Involving players as co-teachers. So in those drills, I often tell them, okay, hey, you know what, that guy blocked your shot. Why do you think that happened? And allow them to come up with the solutions and engage his teammates. Video is highly effective in this situation as well. And then, like, if you're having trouble and you're not getting success, you can always regress it. And there are even, one of the NHL coaches I talked to, they prefer to start at the end point, start at the game situation. And if they find that there's key foundational skills that are missing within that, then they regress and they teach that individual skill, then quickly revisit that situation. So you have retrieval practice in the learning process there. And then they will often have very quick success and start finding new solutions of that situation. All right, so let's wrap this up and let's bring it to and give you a concrete example of how we teach, or how I like to teach a new skill. And hopefully you can take a couple hints from this or a couple tips and apply it to your own coaching practice. So number one thing for us to do is to present the task. We do that on every practice. We want to have a theme. We want to have a point of the practice, a goal, and we can present this in many ways using visual, auditory, or kinesthetic ways of presenting it. For me, I prefer to use pre-ice video and give them a 5-minute video to let them start thinking about it and ask questions and allow them to explore that through talking before we even get on the ice. Once we get on the ice, usually with minor hockey, I think it's best to chunk down the skill that you want to teach into its tiny parts. Use it in isolation with no pressure support. You could do it whenever you want on the ice. But start your initiating of the progress. Bring the pieces together. Teach them their hand movements, their foot movements, where their balance should be, where their face and eyes should be, what should their stick be doing, and build those pieces together like scaffolding. Quickly, you want to put them into the environment or the game situation. Put them into the geography on the ice where that skill is used. Okay, if we're working on one-timers for defensemen, they're typically going to do that off a D-to-D pass on the blue line, or off the face-off, or perhaps in the flank position on the power play. Put them into the geography and start working on it in that situation. You can quickly add pressure, support, time constraints. Start using constraint-based learning to adjust that. Let them have enough time to explore that situation and adjust your environment as you need to achieve that 80-20 split in success versus failure. And then transfer that game into a transfer small area game using your constraint-based learning to increase the frequency of opportunity to apply your skill. Throughout the whole time, coach and player interaction, ask them how they're doing, interact with video, question them, highlight things, teach or identify problems, help them, guide them through the process of exploration. And then if you have the capability of doing game video, if you can put the bookend at the end of it and review transfer of skill in a true game, now we have true skill acquisition. So I'm going to take you through a video of this. And this is the process that I use in a practice that we did, I think it was last year, and just working specifically on bumper habits. But it applies to all of power play. So the first little bit is a small snippet of a 5-minute video that I have on bumper habits, and then we'll quickly get into the ice. So this would be before practice in the
Brains Point is an elite bumper player on the power play in the NHL. One of the reasons why he's elite is he's always available, regardless of who has the puck on the power play. Here, he's able to play right in the middle of the defense. So Darryl Belfray talks a lot about playing between two checks. Here's the two checks right there. He's in the space between those two guys, so it's unclear about who's responsible for him. And if he's able to pull one of those guys far out of the way, that's going to open up something for someone elsewhere. And you can see here how he's wide open between those two guys. He's available for his teammate. He's able to get that puck for a quick shot on net, and it results in a goal.
Okay, so after that video, I mean, it goes on for a little bit further. We'll question, we'll talk about it. So already the players are thinking about it. When we get onto the ice, what we did in this practice is we have 3 stations and we started chunking down a small little piece. So the rules I created for this drill, there's no pressure, so I can encourage high success on the offensive side. I've got a low guy, flank guy, and a bumper guy. And the rules I gave them is that everybody must touch the puck and the final shot must go through the bumper. However you do it, I really don't care. Explore the situation. All right, so you'll see in that little snippet, there's some decision making. It's in the proper geography of the ice. There's no pressure on them. I set a rule. They explored it. They found their own solution. So now we very quickly, just a couple reps in isolation. Now we pop into. We're taking a quarter of the power play and having a low guy, flank guy, bumper guy explore this situation based on what they saw in video, what they just did in isolation. Black is a defender, and here they are just exploring that area. Okay, so it goes on, and we would do that for 10, 15 minutes of just playing. We'd switch sides. Like you could create different rules. You switch players' possessions, so they got to play in all the different positions. And you see there's lots of decision making. They're constantly perceiving, analyzing, making decisions, and executing. There's no routes that we told them there. They just had to figure it out. Now what we quickly do from there is now we adjust the environment. We're going to put them in a different environment. So now we're going to work a little bit of a top part. We're including a defenseman up top, and we're going to work a little bit of the flank player options. So we're going to do it again in isolation first. Just work it around, find some and the rule I gave them here is you have to have a different shot coming in each time. Okay, and again, just in isolation quickly, and then we get into more of a game situation now. So we've got bumper, low guy, flank, high guy, okay? And then we've got a defender here and a defender in black. Now you'll notice that I purposely don't have blacks versus white in a situation. What that allows, what I believe it allows the players to do is to take a little bit extra time of perceiving. They might just see black, see white, and just play it to the person. But when you have to actually look and make sure, is that my player? Are they the right hand? Are they ready? Having different colors, I think, allows them a little bit more of a complexity. So changing the environment, allowing for new exploration. Okay, so after that game was complete, I mean, again, you'll see lots of decision making. You'll see some failures for sure. There's some bad decisions, but that's what we want. Is we want them to figure those things out and identify them, and we can get better and we can further explore them. What I would do after this, and unfortunately I don't have video of that, is that we're going to go to our full ice power play, a little bit more of that traditional 5v4 in zone, and then let them explore it again. There's definitely some concepts that we want them to follow, and if there's some higher quality shot options we want to try to create and improve the conditions of the puck, but that would be the next thing. And then the final piece is the game transfer.
Lexi Tricia has 4. Eagle. With a pass. Scores, Ziegler. He passed it to look and gave it right back to him.
Okay. So, I chose that clip because it wasn't the cleanest of clips. But that's reality of hockey, is that it's messy, right? And our practices should be messy, and again, not the nicest goal, but it still included some of the concepts that we worked on, is using the bumper, integrating the bumper and flank interaction. And so I think that was, I tried to, again, bring that whole concept of bringing a skill to full skill acquisition and application and transfer into the game. So we're about 1 hour in now, and I'm ready to kind of wrap this all up, and encourage you for your questions. But just the final thing, if you can walk away from this, what are the things I want you to walk away from? I've got the complex diagrams I have here, but hopefully I can emphasize a few things here. Number one is, although our names or title are coaches, especially in minor hockey, your role is a teacher. Okay, you got to be a teacher first. And some of the tips that I got from some of the best coaches in the game was, having a clear plan and making a concise message. Use co-teaching and ask questions to your players. Teach to the individual. Always bring lots of energy. Listen to your players. There's a whole bunch of different things I talked about at the start, but just think of yourself as a teacher first. No matter what level you're at, you're still teaching. Apply auditory, visual, and kinesthetic techniques, and I would highly encourage you to dabble with adding video to the way that you present, and teach and help, and I guarantee that'll help the players learn. Add decision making to all of your drills. Now, whether you just want to start out with adding some decision points within your traditional drills, or do you want to go all the way and use some of the concepts I've presented with the nonlinear pedagogy of using constraint-based learning, allowing players to explore, and creating game-based representative drills where there's automatically multiple decision makings. I'll leave that up to you. I would highly encourage you to try to get to that point where you're adding more decision points through the exploration and CBL techniques. And so again, apply those nonlinear pedagogy concepts, the co-teacher, the CBL, and as well as the exploration, and think of that concept of prescribing the problem and not giving the solution. If you can use that, I guarantee that your drills, if you can use that to design your drills will include decision making into it. And so just to wrap up, the final point is if you use all of these techniques and listen to some of the stuff that I presented here today, I truly believe that using nonlinear pedagogy, that understanding that action continuum, we can really solve this problem that people say that we can't teach hockey IQ. I disagree with that. I think it's highly teachable, and hopefully through this presentation, I can impress upon you a couple techniques that I believe will increase and improve the hockey IQ of your players. So thank you guys very much for your attention. I'll open up for some questions right now, and I'll stop sharing. Hopefully.
Great, thanks, Kyle. Yeah, questions, feel free to go off, take your mute off and ask, or type it in the chat, whatever works for you. I'll ask you a quick one before they start flowing in here, Kyle, just to get some conversation going. So you talked about theme practices versus just running drills. Who comes up with a theme? Like, again, I'm seeing all different variations of this. Is it a technical director, a coach, the skill provider? Who comes up with a theme for practice? What does that look like in your experiences?
For sure, and I think maybe I'll talk more from the minor hockey standpoint. Traditionally in the programs I've been involved with, that's coming from the head coach. There's definitely, I know for myself, I used coach mentors quite a bit. I love to interact with my assistant coaches, Alec Miller's here, who coached with me for many years, and we had lots of discussions, and I think as I've become a little bit more refined in my understanding of this, it can come from anybody. For me right now, in my role with Canmore, as more of a skills coach, I have a curriculum of skills that I feel comfortable teaching, and the way that I've got them organized is into isolation, game specific stuff, transfer games, and key points. So I'll often speak with Andrew Millen, our head coach, number one, about what the team needs are. Maybe he's seeing something on the weekend, and how can I augment the practice with those? Or if, oftentimes he'll say, okay, it's carte blanche, and you can use, I think it's going to be up to the organization and up to the coaches about where they feel comfortable with it. But definitely, wouldn't it be great if we had associations that could have a system where those questions could be influenced throughout, like maybe skill directors, program directors, coach mentors, and so on.
Yeah, great. Can you see the chat there, Kyle, or do you want me to read them?
Yeah, I got that. Yeah, so Adam says, any tips on incorporating skill development with conditioning? Yeah, so good question. So right off the hop, small area games are great conditioning. If you do them with a high enough intensity and you make them game-like, meaning 45-second efforts, that is a great way of conditioning. I'll often try to, maybe build in a track or a back check into some games so that they have to get that. It might not be any surprise to anybody here, as I hate bag skating. I hate it as a player. I hate it as a coach. I think it's a complete waste of time, to be honest. And there's probably a role for discipline, but I think you can discipline players otherwise and still use the ice to try to help your players get better. conditioning can be done really easily off ice, and you're still going to achieve the same concept. You can use that as punishment if you want. Hopefully your team's not requiring too much of that, but getting the players to do, it brings up another question about getting players ready for the ice. I would highly encourage any team, probably from Pee Wee up or U13 up, to properly work on pre-ice and getting ready for practice, and then hopefully there's a strength and conditioning program with your group if you're at that level to do that. So
then also
go ahead, but yeah, sorry.
Like the work to rest ratio that you brought up in your presentation too, like that's one thing. I'm sure if there's a presentation on our YouTube channel here somewhere, we did a study a few years ago. I personally went around and watched 50 practices and just used the activity tracker to see how much skating is happening in each practice. And I did everywhere from like U7 all the way to junior. And on average, I think it was 12 minutes that a player skates in practice. So that work to rest ratio thing, and if you think about a game, like your player's ice time in a game is usually 20 minutes, so it's a 1 to 3 work to rest ratio. But like back in the old days running the horseshoe drill is a 1 to 8 work to rest ratio. And that's, I think, why we all had to bag skate back in the day, is because we were standing in line for so long in practices that we never got any conditioning. So the last 15 minutes was always a bag skate or conditioning, right? Where if you have a good practice plan where your ratios are good, that conditioning just happens organically, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I really feel that way as well. I think the other thing too, that I didn't really get into this, but another concept that comes up for this is altering the pace and the intensity of your drills. So it's more about the connecting of the subsequent drills. So if you go out and you go full out hard drill, your execution is going to be flawed, because as we all know, that the more tired you become, the first thing to go is your brain. And if you're really trying to apply decision making, that's going to be really challenging. Now you might use that as a constraint for sure. I think you can see that. But I guess what my point is for connecting drills within a practice, it's important to have a little bit of a crescendo, a little bit of a decrescendo, and a little bit of a crescendo throughout your practice to get the right pace, and also to slow things down. I would use skill development in that situation, where we were going to slow it down. We're going to talk more. We're going to have more one-on-one connections, and then we're going to ramp it up and we're going to apply it. And when we apply it, we want to apply it with pace. Yeah, for hopefully I answered some of those conditioning questions there. Awesome. I got a good question here, Arden. Do you have minor hockey example U13 that applies this style of learning for teaching breakouts? Okay, so style for learning, teaching. Okay, breakouts. So the first off, there's I taught at that younger level some more systematic approaches that I regret now. I think there's some. I like to think of it more as anything in system based at the minor hockey level, especially U13 and younger. Teaching concepts of puck support are really important for breakouts. I would like to, at that level, I would like to make sure that forwards are retrieving and defense are retrieving as well. And we all sort of understand how we're going to best support the puck in a breakout situation. Perhaps a little bit more of a complex play would say you just name the players 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and as you go in, you're going to support them. And some of the concepts you might say is, we need support behind the net, we need support on the wall, we need support on the dot, like a low and slow center support, and then we're going to have a winger covering the front of the net. And that's player number 5. And then you could dump the puck in, and then slowly I would add pressure. So I'd have the coach come in and forecheck initially, and then I'd have 2 coaches, and then maybe you start incorporating the players with their sticks upside down, so that you still give the players an advantage who has the team, or has the puck, I should say. And then you slowly build, and then you can start a great drill of maybe a 4-on-4 drill that starts off with a breakout. And So you got to go in, you got to break it out, and you got to reattack, you know. And so every whistle is a new breakout, and you work out of one end, and maybe you have a net at the center ice and a net at the other end in the normal position. So me personally, if I was going back and coaching that level, I would teach concepts and habits and stay away from systems. But there might be some visual learning that could happen while showing, you know, perhaps a U15 team, how they break out, like one step above them. This is how they break out. Let's look at this. Let's talk about some of the concepts. So that's the way I would do that now. Outside of coaches harping on players, how we can increase player-to-player communication on the ice? Great question. At the U15 level, they don't stop talking off the ice, but once they get on the ice, they're mute. So don't feel like don't feel special by that question. This was week 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the Canmore Eagles this year. You know, if somebody here has a great idea of how to do it, I've tried lots of different things. Alex on this list, I don't know how many times we talked about communication at the Pee Wee level, at the Bantam level, and man, you're dead on though. Like, talk about if you can do one thing different to make the game of hockey easy, it's to talk, and it is across the board the easiest thing that gets your game better. So okay, so a couple techniques I would say is start out with the most simplest passing drill you could ever think of, and they have to call for passes all the time. I would encourage you, a great drill to work on communication is that rondo I showed you. Any 4v2, put it anywhere on the ice, because one of the things I didn't say about the rondo is if you think about the game of hockey, 4v2s happen everywhere. There's 4v2 on the breakout, right? You've got D1, F1 on the wall, or F1 is centerman, F2 on the wall, D2 in front of the net. There's 4 versus 2. Usually there's 2 forecheckers and F3 is high. If you forecheck, right, we're going to attack with 4v2. So rondos are really good to recreate 4v2s, but using that to communicate. You can't pass a puck unless you hear your voice being called, and then they'll start talking. And then what I would suggest is get them into the game situation where talking is really important. We'll use breakout as an example. So now we do a 4v2 in a breakout geography. Now we do a 4v2. Now we do a breakout off a dump in. All communicating. Set a constraint. If you catch a pass and you didn't call for it, play's dead. Next line in. You know. So those are some of the things. If you can incentivize it or penalize the lack of the application, create the constraint-based learning where the constraint applies to communication. If you want a great example of communication, I remember I was fortunate enough to go watch the Frozen Four in the NCAA, and I videoed a couple flow drills that the University of Michigan was doing, University of Minnesota, Denver. It's the loudest practice I've ever heard. And those kids have got the habit down really fast. So if you can show video of teams using it, or hopefully bring them out to a local junior A practice, and hopefully those guys are calling for it. Those would be the techniques I would say. But man, you hit a huge problem there that is across the board. Okay, if you don't have option to show video of your theme or key points before every practice, what are some other ways to clearly define your theme for practice? Great question. So Mark Savard, from the Flames, you know, he said a thing that he's done with Windsor before we came to Flames, and we do this in Canmore, and lots of teams will do this, is post the practice plan up so players can see it. Put the theme up on the board. Put the key points that you want to have. You can communicate it. I've worked with teams, like when we did video with Pee Wee teams where we don't have the luxury of a video screen inside. So I just use my iPad. I'll bring them around, or I'll bring 2 small groups, or I'll bring lines out and we'll talk about it before practice. Oftentimes, you know, audio alone will work. Or if we had a practice that we did, or a habit that we did with 1 practice per week, we would tell the kids to show up maybe 15 minutes earlier, and we would talk through a theme, and oftentimes it was practice based, but sometimes it was not practice based. And then we take that moment to allow the kids to interact with us. We would demo techniques. If we're working on, say, a pull shot or something, we would demo that off ice, and then we'd get on the ice and we would try to incorporate it, bring video into the practice as well. But even if you have you could use a phone with a small group too, but I think iPads are really useful on the ice. I think it's the proper size. If you have, bring the D together, you get positional split with forwards, even them, a group of 9 or 12, they can see the screen pretty good on the iPad.
And Adam, I've got a setup. I just like 32-inch TV. I think they're about $120 or $130. I got a little a bracket on the back of it so you can hang it off of the hooks in the dressing room. It's in my truck. I carry it everywhere, and that's exactly like Kyle said. I usually do whatever team I'm going to be seeing or skating with. I say, like, have the players ready 10 minutes before we go on the ice, and you can usually do a quick 7-minute video just to go through 5 or 7 clips or whatnot, and you can hook it to your phone or bring a computer. I know nobody likes being a pack mule and carrying a whole bunch of stuff in and out of the rink, but if you're interested in that, I can send you a picture of the bracketry and just how I transport it around and whatnot. It actually works pretty slick, just being able to carry it into every rink.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, the aha moment for that was working with Daryl Belfry and Mike Ellis and Adam Nicholas back about maybe 6 years ago. And they had the screen up behind the glass with a HDMI or a Apple TV or something connection. And it was all the water breaks were spent at the screen reviewing. Now, I mean, there is some rinks that have TVs. There's some rinks that don't. For me, I think that is just such an effective way of learning. And I think with the kids, if you guys have kids here, I mean, you already know if you're working with a team that they're on their phone more often than not, and they learn through this. They're taking online classes, some of them, or they're getting lots of visual learning constantly through social media and YouTube, and this is the way that they interact, and this is the way that they learn. And that's, again, adapting our coaching style or teaching style to the learners. And so get right to it. And for me, if I was watching this presentation, I probably would have zoned out a little bit on the dot bullets. But when you show a video of the Seattle Kraken doing a drill, or Carolina whipping the puck around the offensive zone, that gets my attention. So I think it serves a couple fold benefits there.
We are a little bit over on time, so if anybody wants to hop off, feel free. We appreciate you taking this much time already. But I know a few people have messaged already and said they got to get on the ice, so feel free. But if you like sticking around and having a chat, and Kyle, I don't know what you have for time, but this is probably some of my favorite part of it. So,
oh, me too. This is the best part, and good on you guys for being on the ice. Yeah, I encourage you to have the courage and explore some of these techniques on your ice even tonight.
Yeah. Just one quick question here before we hop into this next one of Adam's. I want to get in is, again, just a lot of this stuff is 30,000 foot view, but what is your opinion on perceived development by parents versus what is cutting edge, what is really development? Because you brought up Carl Schwarzenberger there, that was presented at the coach's site. I heard his presentation and I said, like, somebody find me that guy tonight. I got to have a beer with him, because what they were talking about is so far ahead of what parents around here would ever put up. Like, you think about being a skill provider, is how can you take some of this and go into an arena in front of parents that haven't had the education? Like, I guess, talk to me about your perspective on that. Is that divide as wide as I believe it is, or am I out to lunch?
Yeah, I think it is, because so a couple concepts come to mind here. In Daryl Belfry's book, he talks about when he started out coaching, he thought, as long as I pass the sweat test with my players, I've done a good job. So meaning, if the kids come off tired and they're sweaty and there's lots of stuff happening in like really awesome synchronized movements, and the practice looks pretty, then I've achieved my goal. So first off, I think there's a disconnect there. The other disconnect is that social media is distorting what coaches think they should be teaching, in my opinion. There's so many, and I'm guilty of this too. When I was kind of ambassador for True, part of my mandate is I had to put social media pictures out about what I was doing from development. And when I look back at it, I'm like, it's crap. It really wasn't that good. And then that's part of evolution of coaching too. But I think there's so much social media stuff that does not relate to the game of hockey. It's fun, and I will be the first one to say I love the Michigan, but coming down and zoroing the puck up and over this, it's entertaining, but you know, I would say it's hard pressed to say there's a good game situation to do that. So I think the players and parents are getting influenced by that. I think that also, I'll say me as a coach, I've learned a lot over, you know, starting coaching 32 years ago when I was 15. I learned a ton, and it's evolved. And what I thought was important, even I would say 3 years ago, is completely changed. So there is an evolution process to that. So I don't think we can necessarily blame the parents, because there's a lot of coaches that have, and even on this board, I guarantee it that there's people that have different views, and that's good. As far as bridging what you feel is important with the parents, I think that just comes down to communicating and explaining the why. And the easiest way to do that, in my opinion, is differentiating what is called placeholder skills and translatable skills. So placeholder skills are defined as skills that will provide success for the moment. So you think about that early puberty kid who's 6'2" at U13 and can go end to end anytime he wants and can do whatever they want with their head down, and toe drag, and you know, as a coach, that if that kid doesn't lift his head up, he's going to get himself knocked out in bantam his next year, U15 the next year. So teaching that kid how to skate with his head up and how to you know, like, distribute the puck and receive it back, that's a translatable skill to their next level. And just focusing on telling them to do whatever they want, or toe drag this guy with your head down constantly because it's going to win you the game, is not in the best benefit for that player. So if you can explain to the parent what, you know, maybe they want to learn how to do the Michigan. Well, the Michigan is not necessarily a translatable skill. It's a low frequency event, and it's not necessarily a translatable skill. Picking a puck off the wall, however, less sexy. You're not going to get your social media likes for it. But if you pick a wall up effectively off your backhand and be able to get off the wall, cut back, create yourself some space, give your teammate a nice puck with good conditions in the slot, that's going to win games, and that's translatable. That's going to, you know, get you to the AAA level or whatever next year. So I think that's the way that I've done it. And then you also have to be honest with yourself and be humble that if you're not asking questions as a coach and you're not evolving, and you can't look back 2 years later and say what I was doing there was really not that great. You know, there's something wrong. I think something wrong with your evolution too with it. But you know, I mean, I'll say I trained to be a Power Edge Pro instructor, and I did that for many years when I was an early adopter to it. Now apparatuses I see as a challenge to players learning, because it's not game like. I would much rather put a player that actually moves and their stick moves in the same position. And if you want to do a slip and jump over their stick with a crossover jump, that's great. But at least that's more game like. So I think that kind of answers some of your questions there.
Yeah. One more there I skipped over from Adam. What are some of the practice habits players have or don't have that could be developed minor hockey level, or at the minor hockey level? Sorry.
Yeah, some of the practice habits players have or don't have that could be developed. Yeah, good question. So when I was my last coaching minor hockey was at U13 AA level, and we, as a coaching staff, created a basically it was practice habits, but it was the basically our standard, and there was not a whole lot of rules in there, but a lot of it was about paying attention, communicating. If you look at on ice habits, like actual actionable habits, we talked about the calling for pucks. There are certain points where we want like little game-like habits, like stopping on the net after you shoot, hustling back to lines, not giving up on plays, always hunting your rebounds. There's a long list of those, and Adam, I'll give you my email. I'll type that into the chat, but send me a message and I'll send you a copy of that sheet that might answer some of your questions there. It's a long list, and it's a long list of on ice habits. It's a shorter list of behavioral habits that I want in practice. So I'm not sure which one you want, but we could add both of those. You know what? I love this comment by Greg here, where it says, he says, definitely has me thinking about teaching a skill where the players discover the why as opposed to telling them. So that's probably a good summary of my whole talk. Is a technique becomes a skill once you know the why for the technique. So the who, what, where, and why, the trigger, the geography on the ice, the when, all of those things creates relevance for that techniques, and it becomes a skill. And I think if we can, really focus on the why and present them with situations where they can perhaps discover the why or discover other whys or other triggers or other moments, then we're having deeper learning. The other sort of example I was going to give today too was someone was asking me about this presentation a couple of days ago, and I said, I think, when you look at Bobby Orr's comment about, kids don't play pond hockey enough anymore. Like, it's not the physical, thing of being on, bad ice and cold temperatures with a cold puck and getting a puck in the shin that really is the matter. What I think cognitively, or what's happening in your brain in that, when you think about it, there's 15 or 20 players on the ice. They're of all ages, all skill levels. Everyone's skating at a different speed or frequency. People are doing unconventional things. So for you to survive in a pond hockey game, you have to increase your ability to perceive and analyze and make decisions, because atypical things are happening to you constantly. When we do a typical practice and we run a flow drill that is set on this pass here, this pass here, this pass here, and then when you go to the net and you shoot, and then you skate slowly back to your line, we're missing all of those interactions of cognitive application of your skill, and they're not just, there's fewer decision points. So I think that perhaps pond hockey teaches you or exposes you to far more decision points that perhaps give you those opportunities, those triggers to apply those different techniques. And also in pond hockey, you are allowed to do things which perhaps you're not allowed to do in practice. I would say both of my kids have gotten in trouble at certain points along their hockey careers for trying unconventional things. Even though they worked, they've gotten sat, they've gotten disciplined, they've gotten video ripped apart in front of their teams for doing things, even though it created a better condition for the puck, but it wasn't conventional. So I think allowing your players to be unconventional and be creative is how we create players like Cale Makar, Lane Hudson, Jack Hughes, Quinn Hughes. Like, those guys are all excellent because of their creativity and obviously their athleticism. But
yeah, I think you're really onto something there. Just that the unstructured play, or I was out with a team the other night, a U13 team, and we played 4-on-4 keep away in zone. And I don't think they'd ever done it before. And again, it's something that just comes natural to us because we spent so much time playing those games. I'm small town Saskatchewan, and I think we calculated we had 13 extra hours of ice on average a week just with the free ice, right? But it was all games. It was tag, it was keep away, it was all those things. And yeah, they had, the poor little guys had no no concept of how to expand and extend passing lanes and get into open ice and call for a puck. Just all those things that we think should be so, so natural. But yeah, it took, it took 15 minutes of playing the game before you started to see them start to figure it out with some cues and whatnot. But yeah, it's like, it's just not play. It's so structured. Hey, they don't, like the game of tag, right? You and I have talked about the game of tag, all the things that a player picks up in the game of tag that just happen organically. Hey.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially if you can cue the player, or even, like play your 4-on-4, but encourage them to, they can only catch the puck in their skates, right? Like how awesome is that? It's fun for the players, and all of a sudden they're gonna get skills that, like, what do we do for players who or if you're doing your flow drill, what happens when a player makes a bad pass? The whistle blows, the coach gets on them, start the drill over. No, guess what? In a hockey game, bad passes happen more often than good passes, especially at the minor hockey level. And the example I'll give for that is Dylan Dubé has been out for he was a Bow Valley Timberwolf, and I'm one of the physicians for the Flames, so I get to interact with them a little bit more. But one of our kids in Pee Wee, and Alec will remember this, asked him, what's the difference between the American League and the NHL when he was going up and down? And he said, in the American League, I have about this much space to put a pass. It's basically a blade or a blade and a half. I got to put the puck on there. In the American League, when I'm in the NHL, I got 30 feet because they're so good at catching passes. So when we restrict the player by requiring perfect execution of a route in a drill, so the drill looks pretty and it runs smoothly, we're hurting them. And we've talked about this before. Like, I've done drills with skill development where I'm ripping pucks at behind them, in the skates, knee high, whatever, because that's going to happen in a game. And your ability to capture that puck and preserve the possession is incredibly important. How do we learn that without having messy practices and messy drills? And there's a whole movement of coaches that are like, make your whole drills messier. They should look super ugly from the stands, to the point, going back to where you said about parents' expectations. I'm happy when parents get a little bit ticked when they come and look, like, that was the messiest practice I've ever seen. Like, even my rondo video I gave you, I got guys skating through it. Like, we had a power play going on in zone right beside me. I just took the guys that weren't on the power play and on penalty kill. I said, right here, let's go. And it's messy. Let's just go. Like make it spontaneous, because that's how the game is.
Yeah.
And it goes back to recreating representative learning. Is you have to recreate the game and then create your constrictions or your constraints, and allow them to solve different problems. But those are great examples. I love, like, there's so many great coaches I've seen that will start out with a drill that's like keep away. Even my older boy played with in the Helenka last summer, and so their practices, they start out with a 5v5 keep away with two guys stuck on either side of the wall cross ice, and 3v3 in the middle. And so at one end, if you have the puck, it's 3v or 5v3, and it's really great. While the goalies are down getting their proper training for 20 minutes, they're playing keep away, and it's competitive. Like, there's scores, there's consequences for losing, and all it is keep away. Nothing special.
Yeah. I hope that message starts getting out more, because there's a bit of a disconnect there. You hear it almost instantly when things don't look like hockey, and I hope that changes, because like that German model, what they're doing over there, and the fact that and I asked that Carl about it, and he said, like, yeah, parents often don't even come in the rink. He said they're so unattached that they don't even know what we're doing. They don't care. We can just do whatever we want, and you can see by their results and their progression over the last few years is they're putting some of this stuff to work, and it's yielding results for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think that's good, and that's part of the reason why I stopped videoing some of my drills, because they're so ugly. it's just like get a new puck, go, and people all over the place. And there's mistakes, or I shouldn't say mistakes. There are challenging moments. Like I said, if you just describe passing, like I want those. I want guys tripping up and falling and have to pop up and get the puck, and that's why, like, if you constrain the space, there's more player to player interaction. Like in that tight little rondo, there's tight little interactions all the time. It's just like, where the hardest part of the game to play is in front of the net. And so if we can get better at that, man, you're going to make some strides in games.
Yeah. Well, we've gone. Yeah, we're well into it here, so we'll let everybody go. But I know there was a question if we're going to do any more of these. Typically, we find that after Christmas or getting close to Christmas and into New Year's, there's not as much demand for programs or presentations like this. But this year we really focused on more of the the culture and team building and practice planning. We didn't get too much into the technical tactical, but I've had a few people reach out and just ask for some of that also. So in January we might do that. We've got some presentations built on net front play. What does it look like for a defenseman? What are some of the keys? I've got a bunch of stuff built for retrievals, triggers, and so we might get into a little more of that. Just some of the things that I've seen at the minor hockey level that are not super clear, and there seems to be a bit of a disconnect on teaching them. So we might dive into some of that. If you're interested in that, send me an email, please, or reach out somehow, give me a call, whatever it is, and just express interest in any topics, or if you'd be interested in that. And again, one more point to this too is we've just recently started building a development playlist on our YouTube channel, and I think a big focus going forward for us is to really populate that and start sending out links to different presentations and use it as a bit of a library for some of these things, where in the past our YouTube channel wasn't set up very good, where everything was just all mixed together. It was really difficult to find. So we're doing some work on that, and we're just going to, even if we don't have people on these, we're going to gather some information and have some of these discussions and put them on there. Have some short ones, some long ones, just to really try to populate a library that you can jump into when you want to nerd out. So please reach out and give me some feedback on that. Sorry, go ahead. I heard somebody.
I was just going to jump in there and say, Mike, thank you on behalf of all the coaches here. You've been an incredible driver for this. I think it's like these are highly impactful. Obviously from a speaker as much as it is from someone who's watching. So thanks for driving this, and thank you for everyone who's interested in it as well. But yeah, thank you so much for encouraging me to do this and for running this series. It's fantastic. I hope it continues for many years.
Yeah, no, thanks to everybody. Can tell who's passionate about it. It's so nice to be surrounded by peers that are passionate about this also and have these discussions. It fills my cup, and I know, Kyle, it fills yours. So if you guys are into this too, just send me some feedback and we'll keep it going. Even if it's a small group, it's better to share with a small group than try to make it a great production. So we'll let everybody get going here, and yeah, feel free to reach out. Like I said, I sent out that email earlier. Sign up on the HCR link. I've taken attendance here, and I'll go in and check off everybody that was in attendance here tonight, and you'll get credits in HCR for it. So yeah, thank you very much again, gang, and good luck the rest of the season. We'll maybe see you in the new year. Hey, I didn't
What's up,
really know
man?
how to end it I just put everybody in a waiting room, so I think that's
Yeah.
figured
No, it's
out.
all good, man. Yeah. Thanks.
That was excellent.
That
Thanks.
was. Oh, thanks, man. Yeah. Hopefully, I think hopefully it's in that 80-20 range of 20% might not have gotten it, but hopefully 80% got something from it. But it's a hard concept to teach and to wrap my head around. Like I got it was really awesome. I talked to Adam about this a week ago, and I sent him that little diagram that I drew, and with all the constraint-based learning and co-teacher and all that stuff. And like I said, like he was blown away. So he like to get him all excited because this is kind of his jam. And then he sent me this PDF, which I'm sworn to secrecy to not show, but he basically has like a deep dive into all these different types of learning, like things like I didn't get into it here, but retrieval practice, coupling, adaptability, interleaving, spaced learning, elaboration, which are all sort of learning techniques that he applies into some of those concepts of constraint-based learning and the whole exploration. He uses different terms for it, but it's really fascinating to see like the way that he looks at it and Mike Ellis looks at it compared to like well, a lot of other coaches.
Yeah.
You know, like it's super fast. And that was a really fun process. I'm just gonna turn the slide off. Really fun process for me too was you know, just taking a bunch of coaches and saying, give me your top 3 tips for this. And it's so vague. It's just learning and practice. You can go all the